What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more J-drama score, and we're going back to the very jazz-oriented score for The Private Detective That I Don't Like, which is from 2014. As I think I mentioned in the last couple reactions, there are two composers who each composed roughly half the tunes on the, 26-track soundtrack. The one we're going to hear in this reaction comes again from Tokuda Masahiro, and the other composer is Mayuko, the mononymic Mayuko. But yes, this tune is by Tokuda Masahiro, and it translates to, and I say that because there's only one track that's written, no, there's two tracks that are written in English, and all the rest are written in either kanji and or katakana, some of them like a combination. But yes, this track translates to suspicious figure, which is interesting because it has less of a dramatic sonic character than you might think with that name. I will say the tune has a couple different flavors along the way. It certainly features a very swanky saxophone, which you'll hear right away, and it also features some other elements that are sort of nighttime sounding, for lack of a better word, but it ends on a very sweet and warm flourish right at the end of the track. And I always think of one specific instance in which that part of the tune is played. Because again, in a lot of shows, and I don't think this is just with J-drama, but in a lot of shows, there'll be score pieces in the soundtrack, but they're often used in parts. Occasionally you will hear one played from beginning to end, but more often you hear them in sections, or, it'll start one of the tracks in the middle of the full track on the soundtrack. But at the very end of this piece, it again becomes very warm and inviting sounding, and there's an episode pretty late, I want to say it's like the third to last episode, there's 8 episodes total, this I think is in episode 6, when the main two characters, played by Tamaki Hiroshi, who again will always be Chiaki senpai to me, as well as Goriki Yayame, who has been in many things that I'm very fond of, but they're trying to figure out the case, and they come into contact with this sort of like Quickie Mart or like convenience store proprietor who Tamaki Hiroshi's character takes a liking to. He thinks she's very pretty, and he then, for the rest of the episode, wants to go ask her to maybe figure something out about the case, to the point where Goriki Ayame's character is convinced he doesn't really want to go ask her any questions relevant to the case. He just wants an excuse to go talk to her again. And because the show is full of meta-comedy, there's lots of moments where they reference other shows, or they're like, oh, this is just like in this other show. And there's a part where Tamaki Hiroshi's character is talking to this convenience store proprietor, and Goriki Ayame's character is sort of framing it like, oh, this is just like romance scenes from this other show. I forget the name of the show they reference. And there's a shot where they kind of like frame both of them looking very warmly at each other, and that flourish at the end of this track plays. So when I hear that part, hello Luca, I always think of that particular moment. But the tune is used at other times when they're trying to figure things out. But it's interesting to me that it's called Suspicious Figure, because in light of that end of the piece flourish, I think of it as Goriki Ayame referring to Tamaki Hiroshi's character as a suspicious figure because of the way he's acting toward this shop owner. So let's give it a listen. This is by Tokuda Masahiro, Suspicious Figure, from the soundtrack to The Private Detective I Don't Like, or Private Detective That I Don't Like, from 2014. There it is, that warm flourish at the end. And I think if I'm remembering that scene correctly, the shot even sort of puts a heart around them, or it gets like pink and warm at the edges of the shot just to really hammer home the meta comedy, which again the show is full of. There's so many outside references, there's so many moments where especially Goriki Ayame's character, but by the end even Tamaki Hiroshi's character refer to like, well, the audience is going to want to see you conclude this, after the commercial break or at nighttime, or like we should shoot this on a cliff because that's where the drama is the best. And then other characters are sort of like, what do you mean the audience? What are you talking about? Like, there's a meta comedy versus other characters that are more fully entrenched in the fictional universe. So yeah, there's lots of good stuff like that, and that moment always sticks out to me. And when I hear the end of this track, that's the immediate shot I think of. So as I said, the score for this one is very jazz oriented. There are a couple other tracks that have a slightly different vibe. What was the one that I reacted to last time? It's like A Time for Tears or something. I could probably look it up in a moment. But yeah, that one has a slightly different vibe. But most of the tunes have a jazz feeling. And again, here we had, what was it, like a bassoon, I think, as well as some strings like pizzicato, and definitely the brass with that saxophone, which got a bit more like dissonant than I was remembering. At the beginning it's very sonorous and melodious, or melodic perhaps better, but then a moment later it does turn a bit dissonant, which I didn't remember. But yes, ultimately we'll listen to more jazzy tunes from this. I am curious, I'm going to look it up. Give me one moment. Speaking of suspicious figure, look at that suspicious figure over on the chair over there. Okay, it was... Oh, Please Give Me Your Tears. That's what it was. So yes, ultimately we shall continue to go through this and many other J-drama soundtracks, and this suspicious figure will be here the whole time. Do let me know what you think, and I will see you then. Peace.